Hello and welcome back to 3 Lessons from Breakthrough Leaders. I'm Zana Ryabchuk, MD at Breakthrough Global.
And I'm Dr. Bart Sale, Breakthrough CEO and founder. We've spent 30 years developing the Breakthrough methodology to transform companies who want to reach their highest level.
And in this podcast, we'll get to the heart of that transformation, meeting leaders and creative talents to share 3 lessons that we guarantee will help you and your companies to unleash your potential. And Bart and I will take a moment to analyse the key takeaways and opportunities for breakthrough thinking.
In today's episode, we'll learn from Steve Challouma. Steve is the General Manager at Birdseye UK and Ireland for Nomad Foods, the leading branded business in frozen foods. He's spent almost 25 years in the frozen food sector and led the team which re-established Birdseye as one of the top UK most recognised brands.
And today we'll hear these 3 lessons from Steve. Respect your history.
There's always this kind of belief that you need to reinvent and move on and discard and jettison the past. But actually, in some cases, you have that gold in your hands.
Good intentions lead to great opportunities.
Globally, cod stocks were at risk. So we need to be very intentional to kind of confront this and do something major about it. Okay, we were headed towards a crisis.
How the longer road can sustain deeper rewards.
There is all this sense of impatience, actually, to quickly progress. And, at the end of the day, you're in a career for 30, 40, potentially 50 years in the future, right? So there's not a rush. I've never been in a rush. And I've been able to have the right balance between kind of career and personal life and all the rest of it has been in a really good harmony.
Lesson 1, love thy brand.
What it comes down first and foremost to, from a business point of view, is respect for the history of the business and the brand. So where the brand has come from, its history, its heritage, and the value and trust that brings. And when you are leading a brand like Birdseye, you have to recognize that it's had a history before you and that it will have a future after you, right? So you are merely a steward. And that brings a responsibility and a privilege, quite frankly. And if you look at what our most successful products are now, they're the products that were most successful in the 1950s and 60s. Things like products like fish fingers and garden peas, for example. So I've always been respectful and conscious of where the brand has come from. And I think icons like Captain Birdseye are an important exemplar of that. That actually, in the years before Nomad Food, the business had kind of jettisoned Captain Birdseye. So very important brand equity from the past, from the 1950s. Yet there's always this kind of belief that you need to reinvent and move on and discard and jettison the past. But actually, in some cases, you have that gold in your hands. So on the one hand, you've got to respect the past, but you also have to respect that habits change and that you need to stay agile and adapt as well. So really the trick in the revitalization of our brands was to kind of respect where the brand had come from, but to reinvent it to be relevant for modern day needs. And that's what we did. And it's been incredibly successful.
That's great. Your brand was a very important brand in my life. I was brought up in Liverpool and I was brought up on fish fingers, and it was Birdseye fish fingers. I can remember when we were kids, we could tell if it wasn't Birdseye.
You can tell.
You can tell.
Of course.
But that aside, it's one of those real legacy brands, certainly in Britain. Mm-hmm. And I loved what you said about that you're a steward of that, because it was there before you came and it will be there after you've gone. And I'd like you to just say a little bit more about it. It's really the first time I've heard that with such meaning, as you being a steward of the brand. And so what are your responsibilities in that?
Well, I'm quite an analytical person, and I always see things in terms of numbers. Okay. If you look at how many meals we're present in the UK every year, it's 1.5 billion meals. a year feature one of our products. Okay, so there's 4 million meals. If you were to divide that into days, it's 4 million meals a day have one of our products, whether it's a fish finger, a Yorkshire pudding, whatever it is. And actually, just to visualize that and how that manifests itself in homes around the country is that just blows my mind. Okay, even fish fingers, it's 1.8 million fish fingers a day.
That's incredible.
And you just start to think about that, and you just visualize the role that it plays at the center of a family or a household, and all the conversations that happen at that tea time table. It's humbling, and it's quite overwhelming, actually. Or the Sunday lunch, a roast dinner on Sunday with our Aunt Bessie's kind of Yorkshire puddings and roast potatoes. I mean, there's nothing, everyone has fond memories. It's of a roast dinner. It's possibly the most emotional dinner of the week. We have our brand line, which is "Caring is the hardest thing we do," for Aunt Bessie's, which is our strap line for that brand. It's the ultimate show of love and care to your family. I mean, you think of all the pots and pans and all that hassle of making a roast, and you've got 8 different components and different vegetables, and everyone's got their own special different way. Or even a pizza, having a pepperoni pizza with your friends watching the Champions League final. I mean, we're just present at so many moments where people are bonding and together, and that is quite humbling and overwhelming. But then with that comes also that responsibility that you're playing in terms of both at a micro level on people's nutritional well-being, which is such a key driver of why I've stayed with this business so long. Right, so we sell vegetables, and this nation, we don't eat enough vegetables. We're all right with fruit. Vegetables are difficult. So when I wake up in the morning, so how do we sell more vegetables and make vegetables interesting? So those keeping our nation healthy and fed and kind of good nutrition, but also those bigger themes that are becoming more important in food: sustainability, packaging, recyclability, and the benefits that freezing brings, which actually in the last 5 or 6 years have really come into the fore. That theme of food waste. When I started 25 years ago, people didn't really talk a lot about food waste. But now it's rightly so, a massive topic. And actually, by freezing food, you avoid food waste completely. All those vegetables that get soggy in the back of your fridge, or the chilled ready meal that goes off past its sell-by date. So there's a huge kind of emotional link to, and like you, Bart, I grew up with bird's eye beef burgers and fish fingers, and then I was a student, and it was waffles with beans on top or a nice fried egg or whatever. And again, it's the circle of life. And then you grow up. I met my partner at work as well, my wife, and we've had 3 kids, and now we're serving them fish fingers, and you go through that circle. So it's a beautiful thing, and I'm a bit. That's probably the principal driver of what I'm excited working on these brands today as I was 25 years ago. And it's something I'm always conscious of when people join the business, is to lead them to that kind of aha moment for the brand and capture that kind of essence of what the brand stands for and what it means for them as well. Get that sense of purpose for them. And when they've got that, my goodness, it's so powerful, and they feel so proud to work for the business, and they really get an intuitive sense of the brand and go the extra mile. So if you can harness that in the business, it's so valuable and for the business as well.
It's so inspiring to hear Steve talking about his company and his people and his brand with such passion and such emotion.
It's true, because finding real meaning and importance in what a brand delivers is hugely motivating, or can be demotivating for a team if you don't have that behind kind of your mission for why you're doing what you do. And talking about these special moments at Bird's Eye, and getting to shape and be part of kind of elevating this food into treasured memories really, really resonates with Steve. And I know it resonates with the teams that he works with. And actually, it resonates with me. We've had far too many conversations about fish fingers over the course of recording these episodes, because there's so many memories built up in it. Some examples that really have stuck with me from where we've helped clients to reinvent their purpose and create much more meaning behind what they're actually delivering include the shift from a pet food organization that was really, really focused on selling just pet food. And by moving that towards pet care, it created a whole new world of opportunity for them. And it shifted the focus from being about the pet, which seems slightly less inspiring, to being about the person behind the pet who was going to be able to care for their pets more effectively and give all of that extra kind of love and attention. And of course, it was very, very lucrative for them to create that shift, as well as made them feel that there was more meaning behind the work they did every day. It puts it at a much, much, much higher level.
Lesson 2, start with intentionality.
You mentioned earlier intentionality, which is a concept that we use a lot and we talk about a lot,
yes,
and we kind of embed into organizations. What does intentionality mean for you?
Intentionality for me is solving problems and turning from problem into action. One of the phrases that's really stuck with me and is a great example of intentionality is the phrase enlightened self-interest. Okay, I'm sure you've come across that concept before. But this idea that you do well by doing good and by satisfying a broad range of stakeholder needs, and where you have an intersection, if you like, of a commercial insight and then a consumer insight and maybe another insight, societal insight, that's where magic can happen. So I'll give you an example of that. On fish fingers, it always comes back to fish fingers, doesn't it? My goodness. If we go back historically, fish fingers, and when you were growing up, Bart, but also when I was growing up, fish fingers were all cod. But when we got to the early 2000s, cod actually got into quite a risky situation from a sustainability point of view, because globally there was an over-reliance on cod, and cod stocks were at risk. Notwithstanding then that commercially, because stocks were going down, the cost of cod was rising steeply as well. We got to a position where not only there was an existential risk to that business in the long term, if we didn't do something, it wasn't commercially viable. Okay, so we need to be very intentional to kind of confront this and do something major about it. Okay, we were headed towards a crisis. Now, what we did was we discovered in our hands that there was another species that we could use in fish fingers, and this was called the Alaskan pollock. Okay, but Alaskan pollock is very, very similar to cod organoleptically. So if you were to do a blind taste, most people can tell the difference. And so we came up with the idea: well, what if we transferred a lot of our fish fingers from cod to pollock, which was far more sustainable and far more widely available and much cheaper? Then there was a question of how you market that and finding a hook in order to attract consumers to it. And what we discovered was that, yes, visually it was still flaky and white, which is what people, you can imagine in focus groups, people want your fish fingers to be white, flaky, and the breadcrumb and all the rest of it. But the Alaskan pollock has double the amount of omega-3 in its flesh than cod. So what we did is we launched alongside our cod, instead of calling it a pollock, we called them the omega-3 fish finger and positioned them as a healthy alternative to a cod fish finger. And we stopped promoted cod. It's still available, but really went heavy on the Alaskan pollock. That was a fantastic initiative. I mean, in the first year, there was 4,000 tons of cod that we were able to shift supply in terms of from cod to an Alaskan pollock. It was a far cheaper species, even though it's just as good quality. So commercially, it was really positive. And from a consumer point of view, there was this benefit of bringing omega-3, which omega-3, and especially at that time, it's great for kids and developing brain health. And so now that omega-3 business or pollock business is 2.5 times the size of the cod. And that's allowed cod stocks to replenish, actually, and they're no longer under the same threat. And we only source kind of sustainable cod and pollock. But that's a really strong example for me of facing a crisis, an existential crisis, but kind of marrying a consumer insight and a product insight that actually ended up being very profitable for the business as well.
What Steve's describing here is a breakdown. At Breakthrough, we love breakdowns because we believe they're the source of our greatest breakthroughs.
Most people, when they hear breakdown, they want to avoid it or deny it. Instead, at Breakthrough, we teach people to embrace your breakdowns, declare your breakdowns, because actually the breakdown is your source of your breakthrough. There's two pathways. One is the breakdown pathway, where we deny and we avoid. And as we do that, we live with that current situation, which gradually declines and becomes a crisis. In the breakthrough pathway, we start with intentionality. We need to recognize the breakdown, declare that breakdown, and then create a team that's motivated to get a breakthrough. And once we do that, we add new positive energy to it. We create new possibilities out of that energy. And then we create new opportunities out of those possibilities. Lesson 3, care is a commitment.
What is it that's kind of kept you in this role? And what would you say are some of the benefits of actually hanging on and kind of weathering some storms and then kind of building on that mastery in one particular area?
I think there are a few things that have kept me there that long and that keep me motivated. And some we've touched on already. But the most fundamental thing is I love business, right? And this is a proper business that manufactures an end product. You know, you can visualize a little graphic of a factory, and the stuff comes out of the factory and goes in a shop, and then you sell it, and there's cases, and they take it home. And so I just love. It's a classic good business that has a profit, a P&L, and all the rest of it. But that's not distinctive to our business, right? But it's a perfect example of that. So some of it we've spoken about already, which is that kind of purpose and that role that our brand plays and the reach it has, and just the pride and the role it plays in my life. I mean, I eat our food several times a week, right? And it just touches all age groups, all income brackets, all cultures and the rest of it, and that breadth of choice. So, you know, that's at the fundamental level. I think there's certainly benefits for the business of having this kind of long tenure in terms of you start to develop that deeper kind of latent knowledge of the category and what consumers want and what drives the category. And that's not something you can teach. So, you know, however much data that you have, there's a kind of underlying intangible sense that you have of what might work or not. It's a bit dangerous because the risk with someone like me is, you know, a lot of new ideas come to the business. They tend to be ideas that have come before. And so I'm always conscious not to kind of say, oh, we did that in 1997 or 2004 and it didn't work, because sometimes with ideas, you know, their time hasn't come, and there's been loads of examples of that, right? I think so that's the kind of business and the benefits and the basis. And then I think the other thing is it's a business that's always given me opportunities, and I've been happy, and I've been able to have the right balance between kind of career and personal life and all the rest of it has been in a really good harmony. And it's been it was harder early on in my career because I had all my friends who are from school or university, and, you know, say when I was 7 or 8 years in, and they were like, really, you're still at Birdseye? And, you know, you can imagine, you know, all the kind of slightly more aspirational brands and businesses and advertising agencies and kind of more insurgent brands that kind of some of my friends were working for, and they were pressuring me, you know, you're going to become a bit stale and your CV is going to look terrible and a bit staid. So I've always felt that bit of pressure that you have to kind of move to progress, or that you're going to be perceived somehow as narrow-minded, but I don't know, that hasn't held me back. I think it comes back to this point of passenger and player, actually. So if I get to that position where I think I'm plodding, where I think the business doesn't have opportunity and I can't be stretched as a leader, then then I'll consider it. But I don't think, I can't see that ever coming, because I think as much as the business itself, that's self-generated as well. And, when I have considered it, there's nothing else has come close in terms of that core purpose. I haven't been able to beat kind of encouraging children to eat vegetables. But it's something I always talk to kind of junior, less experienced people in the business. There is all this kind of sense of impatience, actually, to quickly progress. And, at the end of the day, you're in a career for 30, 40, potentially 50 years in the future, right? So there's not a rush. I've never been in a rush. And I've done a lot of different functional roles, sales, marketing, category, and you've got enough time to kind of get breadth as well as progression. And so I've always had that sort of patience, and the business has allowed me to have that richness.
That was wonderful. In that experience that you developed, and I like the fact that you said that, sometimes you don't have to rush. and in that experience that's been so important to you, what are the key leadership principles that you've developed for yourself and adopted and shared and helped other people to grow with?
I think the most powerful thing for me is the importance of respect for people. Clearly, I've gone from a position where I've been a junior within the organisation to lead in the UK. And when I was a junior, I couldn't dream that I'd be doing it. It just seemed so inaccessible, that those kind of bigger roles, and intimidating in a way. And I've always been careful, as you sort of grow in an organisation, to keep that sense of connection and down-to-earthness and groundedness with everyone in the organisation, whatever value they bring, big or small, because that's where strategies develop, that's where strategy is implemented. So one thing I'm always being conscious of, and that's become even more important in the last 18 months, is to build very, very broad personal connections with people across the business. Because I think the danger is you grow within an organization, you lose that, and you become a bit inaccessible, and you become a bit unapproachable. And I don't like that. I partly remember what it was like, but I want people to be able to approach me and my teams in order to bring their whole self to work. And through that's where you'll get that extra 1% from people, those little shifts that will have big impacts. And, if you look at how respect manifests itself, right, it's listening, it's affirmation, it's empathy, and it's gratitude and consideration. So all of these more human elements, I think, have become so important as a leader. And that's how I really love to lead, and that I think is critical in terms of how I approach this respect.
Steve touched on a concept that is very, very, very familiar to the people who work with us. It's called passengers, prisoners, and players, or we call it the 3 Ps. Essentially, in every single organisation that we work in every single room that we walk into, there are 3 kinds of people who show up. The first of those kinds of people are the passengers. The passengers, they just want an easy ride. They want to have a good time. They don't want to put too much effort in. And it's exactly the same in their organizations. There are passengers in every single organization, people who are really kind of the excess weight. They're just sticking around till the end of the month so they can pick up their paycheck. The second of the Ps are the prisoners. And if you can imagine that the passengers are the excess weight, the prisoners, they're adding active resistance. They're the ones who, when we walk into a room, have got far more important things to be doing. They've got far better places to be. And we see them in every single organisation too. They're the people who are very, very grumpy in a meeting and usually don't have many ideas about how we can fix the problems that they're spotting all over the place. But of course, finally, there's the third P, which are the players. These are the people who are playing to win, and they're playing to win for the team, not just for themselves. These are the make it happen people. And again, we see them in every single organisation, in every room. And there are millions and millions of players all over the world who are making the most of their lives. This is a great way of identifying different levels of intentionality. So ask yourself, where in my life or my work am I being a passenger? Where am I being a prisoner? And how can I shift to be more like a player? Now, let's get into the hot seat. So, Steve, time for the hot seat. What is the most exciting thing you've ever done?
Okay, well, I'm going to share my professional claim to fame here, which is I've met all 7 Captain Birdseyes.
I am not worthy. That is incredible. Respect.
Okay. There you go.
What inspires you in life?
I would have to say my family and my children. They bring me down to earth. They keep it real. They bring me joy. So I love their curious mindset, their naive questions, and their take on the world. And they always remind me to be curious. And I love learning with them. So earlier this week, my middle son, he was doing something for school on Mount Rushmore, in the US, where they carved the president's head out. And I didn't really know. And I loved doing that homework with him. And I found all these fascinating facts that I won't bore you with you now about. There's behind Abraham Lincoln's head, there's a massive storeroom that was supposed to store all America's kind of key secret documents, but that was never finished. So yeah, it would be my children.
Finish this sentence. Success is?
For me, success is balance. Okay, so the analogy I would like to use here, that I always like to think about, is a graphic equalizer. So when you're listening to favorite music, right, there's the bass and treble, and you're always wanting to optimize those different aspects. In life, you have your career, you have your family, you have your parents, you have your hobbies, you've got your community, you've got your health. So, life is, success is getting the right kind of balance of those elements on your own personal graphic equalizer.
I couldn't agree more, actually. I think that's exactly my definition of success as well. It's got to be balanced, Definitely. All right. I think that's it. Steve, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you so much for agreeing to join us on the show. It's been a fantastic pleasure having you.
Oh, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. And it's just been like down the pub speaking. Really. And that's the best way, definitely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've enjoyed it. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. Do make sure you hit the subscribe button and join us next time for another 3 lessons from Breakthrough Leaders. You can reach out to us at Breakthrough Global on LinkedIn or Facebook, via Twitter at Radiant Clarity, or Instagram at Global Breakthrough.
And we'd love to hear your feedback and your own leadership stories. We'd also love for you to share this episode on your own social media and review and rate this podcast on your player of choice, as we want to spread these transformative lessons as wide as possible.
And thanks to our production team, Yulia Schultes over at Breakthrough Global and Robin Lieburn at Fairly Media. And of course, thank you for listening. See you next time.